I hate being in front
You're
of a
just
camera.
like me.
Okay, 1986 Weekender.
Westfalia Weekender.
All right, tell me when.
When?
All right, y'all. This is the 1986 Weekender Westfalia van. Doing it with Ben Logan, my boyfriend. Basically what we got here is an old rusty old lady. We've got a crack in here in the windshield. We're going to replace that. We've got rust all along the seams, back and forth. We've got some rust here, which is pretty typical of these vans. So we're going to get that out of here. Take out these windows. We're going to take out this window. We're going to repaint the whole thing. We're going to sand it. It's going to be this original gold color, which is sick. We're going to take out these windows too, all of it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. We're going to fix this rust here, all in the seam. Going to get rid of these, this dent. It's going to make it a lot easier to open the door. As you can see, got some more rust up here. Yep. Biggest thing about it is getting rid of the rust, taking out the dents, putting the windows back in after she's been painted. Voila.
All right, quick update on this van. We did the sandblasting around here. You can see that we were able to dig a lot of this rust out. But some of these lower panels here, this is a really common problem, and it's a very simple repair, so I thought I'd do a video on it because I know there's a lot of people that probably wish they repaired this panel after they painted the van and a year later when that rust comes back. So you can see right along here, there's rust all the way through after sandblasting, and where the bumper mounts is pushed all the way back. For some reason, this particular replacement panel is a high quality, so it's nice and thick, and I know a lot of the other replacement panels I get on the van aren't as high quality, so I'll try to steer away from those. But this particular brand, I bought it at Bus Depot. It's nice thick quality, and the way that they're stamping is it fits right in, and it makes a very seamless and easy repair. One thing that you want to note is sometimes on the stampings there's little crinkles from where the metal was forged or bent into that die, and it might have like a high spot in it. So what I'll do is I'll grind that down, because it will act like a shim when I replace this, and it'll stick it out too far. So you want to make sure both surfaces made up very well before you do it. First step in this, you can see where the seam originally is. I'm just going to take a grinder. I'm going to cut about a 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch away from that edge. I'm going to drop this piece right out, and then I'm going to remove the rest of the metal that's actually bonded to the body of the car. Once both surfaces are prepped, I'm going to sand this and drill some 1/4 inch holes here, just randomly in it. And I'm going to go underneath and I'm going to tack it. But before I do that, about, I don't know, an 1/8, maybe 1/4 inch away from where I'm going to weld, I'm going to put epoxy all the way down it. Not close enough that it's going to catch on fire or have an issue once it's welded. I'm just using the welds to tack it, and the epoxy is going to hold it, but it's also going to seal it. So once that's in there, I'll show you what that looks like, and we'll go ahead and with these other areas that we sandblast, so you see that it's not pitted all the way through. We'll be able to skim that, block that out, and this will be a seamless repair, and we won't have to worry about rust coming back. Like I said, super simple repair, so I thought we'd do a video because I know it's one that most people will take on. Alright, that didn't take any time at all. Successfully cut out the old piece. But once I got in there, I started looking at the flanges that I'm going to be bonding to. There's a little bit of surface rust, or a lot of bit of surface rust under here. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to get a quick sandblasting with this to prep that surface. And what that's going to do is give us metal adhesion, and we won't have to worry about rust coming back to haunt us. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then we'll bond this thing together.
You're going? I can't do it on the first take. Okay. All right, so what was I gonna say?
You're gonna say, Well, Ben's taking care of the panel replacement on this van.
Okay.
I've been sanding it with a 220 grip to prep the surface
All right,
for
okay,
primer.
okay. Wait, is this door open?
Yeah.
Okay. Ready?
Yeah.
Hey guys. Well, Ben's been taking care of this panel replacement on the van. I've been sanding this with a 220 grit, trying to get it prepped for paint. Next, we have to get this the pop top off, and we're gonna take that off separately so we can sand it, paint it, get that out of the way. But to do that, we're gonna take this razor blade here, and we're gonna cut around the top of this canvas. And that way, when we take the top off, we can take the canvas, pull it in, and use that as a shield to keep the paint out of the van. All right, we're gonna cut the canvas here. I know it seems tragic to just cut it, but we're gonna replace the whole canvas anyway, so that gives us an opportunity to take this off. We're gonna fill a cap full of bleach, get some scrubbers, and they'll take all this mildew and mold off the top of the pop top. It does seem kind of tragic to just cut it. See, we've got the canvas down. Now we're gonna take the front luggage rack off. So this is held on by 4 10mm nuts here in the back, and then some screws in the front. These screws can be pretty tricky to get off sometimes, especially if they've been rusted. So what we'll do is we'll lube them up for about 24 hours, and then if we need to, use an impact driver to take them off. All right, my next project today is sanding this pop top down. So I'll take this sander with this 220 grit paper, and I'm gonna do the whole thing. It's gonna look great. We're just getting it ready to be primed. So we'll have to take the sunroof off, which will take a minute, but we'll get there. Gonna take off all these seals all the way around, and we've got brand new ones to put on there. And a nice pro tip is to take, if you have a heat gun, to use a heat gun and take off all this stuff. It'll come right off real nice. We've sanded these both down with a 220 grit sandpaper. We used a wax and grease remover on both of them. And next we're just going to use a urethane primer. All right, so we've primed the top of the van, and now we've got these little like paint fuzzies, as you can see on here. Really easy to just sand off, so we're gonna go ahead and do that. And then the imperfections on the top, we wanna fill in with a 2-part putty mixture. And if you fill it nice and high, it'll save you time in the long run, and then you can just sand it down. All the surfaces are prepped and ready for Ben, and now he's gonna put the base clear on.
All right, Katie did an awesome job prepping the surfaces on the top over there. We have it done with a high build urethane primer, blocked out, wet sanded, and it's just a beautiful surface finish for the paint to go down. And everything about painting has to do with preparation on the surface, because this paint's not gonna cover anything. You can see here, we're using a Volkswagen stock color. It's got tons of metallic flake in it, so that will be a little bit of a challenge to put on. You have to have your technique right so you don't have tiger striping. But I'm gonna go ahead and load this gun. We're gonna lay about 3 coats of base on and another 3 coats of high-grade urethane clear. And this thing's gonna look amazing. I've done this color multiple times. I love it every time. So let's go ahead and do this. Go.
All right, guys, so we're here with the pop top, and we have a ton of mold and mildew on here, and we want to go ahead and get rid of that. So all we're going to do before we put the canvas on, we're going to get a cap full of bleach in a tub of water.
A cat full of bleach?
That's what it is.
Okay.
A cap full of bleach, and we're going to put it in a bucket of water, and then we're gonna put it all over the top here. We're gonna let it soak in, and then we'll come back, and you just need a little bit of elbow grease, and you're just gonna scrub it, and it'll come right out, and it'll make it look all brand new. The reason we do that before we put the canvas on is we don't want to get bleach on the canvas and ruin it. And so come back in an hour and this is going to be perfectly clean. All right, so the bleach worked really well on the pop top. As you can see, there's barely any staining at all anymore, and it looks brand new. We repainted the inside of the sunroof thing. It looks nice and crisp. Next thing we're going to do is put on the canvas. So this is a screwed in canvas. Sometimes they are going to be stapled. The screw is a little bit easier, so that's nice. Really, we just need to make sure that the corners are pulled really tight. And that, what?
It's on the right side.
It's on the right side.
The right way. A lot of people put them on upside down, and it drives me nuts because I see it and it looks terrible. So keep that in mind.
All right.
Now that we've got the top all painted with the base coat, clear coat looking great, we're back to working on the body. And what we have here is we had some major dents all down here. I see this all the time actually. If you see a gouge down the car just below the seam, most of the time it's from a picnic table, because these campers go to campsites all the time and then people just don't realize that that lower part of the picnic table's there and it gets hit. I don't know how it gets hit so hard because it does a lot of damage, but this was hit all the way down here, and what I did was I welded some studs on here and I used a slide hammer to pull the majority of the dent out. Unfortunately, the panel was still ripply all the way down. It wasn't deep, it was just ripply. So I skimmed the whole thing in plastic body filler, or some people call it Bondo, but that's just a brand. And if it looks like there's a lot on there, well, that's because there is. So to create a straight panel is very hard. If this was a rounded car like a Volkswagen Beetle, it'd actually be easier to get a nice finish off of it because it's rounded and the light refracts off it in a different way. With a flat panel like this, it's like a mirror. You get that high gloss finish on there. So you have to ensure that you create a flat panel to get a nice car. Otherwise, when your car goes down the road, it's going to look pretty terrible. So what we did, like I said, we slide hammer, filled it with plastic body filler. I sanded it with a DA sander to smooth it out. And then what I do, I take a flat block and I block sand it back and forth and look for any low spots that aren't being hit by the grit. And if it's still there, I skim it again. And if we go back here, this was a relatively large dent on the corner, so it was a little more challenging because it packed the corner in. So what I did the slide hammer, filled it, but what you do with the block, you work it back and forth and you just shape it. And you're only as good as your highest spot. So you can see the metal right here is high, and that's from where I pulled it out and then tapped it with a hammer back down to try to level it the best I can. But that's metal here, so you can't sand any more past that, because once you paint the panel, this will be a high point and it won't look good. Luckily, I have this dialed in very well. And like I said, I didn't just put the plastic body filler in the damaged area because the panel's rippled. I skimmed the entire panel right to the seam. And what that does is it gives a nice transition into any deviation. And when I sand it, I use the other panel to level it out. So if it is slightly higher here, you're not going to be able to catch it with your eye. And it's amazing what you can do sculpting in something. So if you look at it, you can really start sculpting something in. And I left this radius sharp, and what I'll do is I'll hand sand that in. Then we'll just go ahead and we'll put a high build primer in, and we're going to sand it just like we did the top and get that beautiful finish. But I want to catch you up on some of that body work. I also want to show you what the step looks like now. So after replace the metal, like I said, with the epoxy, pulled the screws out, and now there it is, skimmed with a, it's actually called Duraglass. It's got a little bit of fiberglass in it, but that's very strong. It's going to look beautiful when it's painted, and there's no more rust. It's been completely sandblasted and repaired. That's just the way I do it. I'd say it was the right way to do it. You can do it any way you want, but that's epoxied in, and I like it. So, all right, I guess we'll tune you in a little bit. All right, another update on the van. We're coming to the final stages of all the major body work, and then after this, it's just going to be finished taping it off, getting that primer on so we can block sand it out. We have the steps done. I have all the seams scraped out that were bad and resealed, and I pulled the door off because it's going to need a little light sandblasting down in this lower part. And I'm going to take the opportunity while the door's off to replace these upper bearings, because there's just what's remnants of what the bearing was before. Here's the outer race. So the door was real sloppy. That will clean that up. And then also this lower track down here, pretty rusty. It's surface rust, but we're gonna go ahead and take the opportunity to sandblast this out. And rather than painting it with like the high grade automotive paint, I'll probably tape it off and hit it with you know, an enamel or a Rust-Oleum paint, something with a little bit of oil in it, help it prevent seizing back up, and it can just be black. Let's go around real quick to the other side and take a look at the seam, what we did here. So I used a panel epoxy on the seams, and down here, I get a lot of questions on how do you do your seams, how do you do your seams. I've changed it, I've used all kinds of different seam sealers. The Vanagon's pretty unique because the seams are external. There's only a handful of vehicles I can think of off the top of my head that has that configuration. But what I did was on this one, and I've done it on the last couple, is I mix up a 2-part epoxy, which is made for panel adhesion. And I take a knife, I cut out any of the old seam sealer in here, sandblast any evident rust, and this just had a little bit light rust in there, so I sanded it out, and you're gonna see the seams completely dug out at that point. I use the epoxy with a squeegee and force it into the seam, and then I just clean it up with my glove, or my finger with a glove on, and then wipe it, and it gives that detail, that factory look to the seams. And then afterward, I'm just gonna have to sand this, and it'll be good for primer. But that's where we're at. Got the other step replaced too, and this is what it looks like after it's all been filled and sanded and replaced with good metal. So this van's starting to look solid again, and I'm excited to get it in primer because it's just the next stage of the project, and it's hard to get there. And then the girls are working on the synchro here. Let me have this. There's Katie. And then Nikki's working on this one. So we got 2 vans going right now. Where are you at, Nikki?
Over here?
You hiding?
No, I'm doing the other side now. I finished the back.
There you go.
Finally, the bane of my existence was those holes.
Yeah, that is tough to
And I
sand.
still have to go back and hit them with the Scotch pad, but it took me like 2 hours.
So we got 2 going, and then this will we'll keep you updated on this one. I'm trying to be more diligent about making videos. I know I always say that, I'm just bad at it. And I'm also doing this one, so keep you posted. So the girls are out there sanding the van, and there's been a wasp nest in there, and with all the vibration of the sanding, they keep coming out, and their overreaction's hilarious, so I'm gonna go try to scare them. See how we flip this around. There's a bug on you. Dude, bee! It's right there! It's on, dude, it's on your back.
Why are you fucker? Why are you taking us out of our focus? We're focused. Fucking focus.
All right, so we got the door off. Like I said, we're gonna do some light blasting in the back, which you already did. We cleaned up the track, we sandblasted that. And now I'm just kind of tuning in the Bondo work on the door. Like I said, the door was dented. We pulled it with a slide hammer. And unfortunately, the door's solid, but it's rippled all the way down. So we had to put a lot of mud on there. And the last step in making the mud actually look good, and a lot of people do this mistake, they'll sand it with a DA or something, and it'll be smooth, and they'll think that the bodywork is good. But what you're going for isn't just smooth, you're going for straight. And to make it straight, you need to use a large sanding block, and it's just kind of monotonous. You go back and forth until you block that door right down. And what this is doing is making the surface completely level. You go one way, and then like in an X pattern the other way, you go this way. Hit it from all directions and just keep it linear as you're going in that direction, and eventually you'll block that door down straight. You might need to add some more mud. This door is actually really straight right now. There's a minute dip right here, which I'm going to try to block out and then just call it good. And this door should look really nice and straight.
Go.
All right, we finally got all the body work done on the van, and Katie did a wonderful job taping it off, and there is a lot of taping. So if you take a look at this, there's about 8 rolls of tape in this thing. It's not easy to tape one of these off. Even though we removed a lot of parts, you still have to pick a paint line. So she did a nice job taping on the inside of the seams. When we paint this, all these jams will be painted with the new paint, rolled the carpet back and picked it through here. So it's actually going to be painted. The carpet will flip over, it will look seamless. Be able to get right in the jams here. Also, these windows are all removed, and these has been sandblasted, and you know, all the right preparation's been done. So that's going to be painted right underneath the seals. And then we're going to be painting inside the jams back here. And it looks like she's got a nice paint line on one of the body seams, so this will blend right in. And when you look in here, it will look pretty seamless, especially when the mattress is on there. We had to do some sandblasting through here. Still got to repair this one spot, but it's ready to go. We were going to put the high build primer on it, but it's starting to rain, so unfortunately we're going to have to wait on that, pull it into the garage, and hopefully after the weekend we're going to get the high build primer on there. We block sand it, prime it again, and we'll be able to paint it. But I just want to show you where we're at, and the car just looks really good, and I'm excited to get the primer on and disappointed that it's about to rain. We could prime it in the barn. I got drops, like I said, but by the time we get them all down and clean everything up, it just would be nicer to paint it outside. And this is a high build primer, so we're sanding it anyways. We'll paint it probably in the garage depending on weather conditions, but yeah, thanks for tuning in. Catch up with us when we get it painted. All right, we got the car in a high build urethane primer, and we put multiple coats on. What that did was it built up media that we can then sand down and level the car out. And what's really great about this step, and if you miss this step, it's a big step to miss, because this is how we create such a straight car. We sand it flat. I'm using a 240, and what we did, we took a pencil, and any low spots that weren't hit by the sandpaper have a little bit different texture to it, and you'll see that as the low rough area. What we're going to do, we're going to go back in, we're going to fill it. So down here where I've laid around some Bodywork, when the car was hit and that metal got pushed down, it got pushed up here. So this created a high spot, and where I filled it, that's level, and this is low. So what I got to do is I'll just take a glazing putty, I'll skim that, I'll re-block it, spot prime these areas with a spot primer, and re-block these. Then we'll wet sand the whole car with a 400, and what that will do is give us a really nice surface to put that paint on. So I know it looks like a lot of work, and that's because it is a lot of work. But yeah, we're just going to fill all these little things. We're going to have a very, very straight Westfalia here. Somebody will be really happy with it. All right, Katie and I wet sanded the car with a 400 grit. And when I say wet sand, it means we took paper, left it in a bucket till it soaked up, sprayed the car down with water, and actually sanded it wet. And what that does, you can see the dust, that fine dust stuck to the vehicle, so you're not inhaling it. And it also gives lubrication to the sandpaper, so you get that extra smooth finish, which is what we're looking for, because that's the texture that the paint's going to kind of look like. Especially with this high metallic, you want it to be nice and smooth. So now, it's pain in the butt, we got to wipe the whole car down after sanding it. Then we're going to wipe it with a wax and grease remover. Then we're going to wipe it with a tack rag, and all this dust will be removed, and we can paint. And that's just how painting goes. You're making a huge mess, and then you need a pristine environment to paint in. So it's back and forth, back and forth. It's a constant battle, but that's just the way it is. So we're gonna paint the jams first, then we'll paint the rest of the car. We take all the tape off and see how we did. All right, now the van's painted with a base coat clear coat. We put 3 coats of clear, but since it was pretty warm out that day, there was a little bit of overspray that would go from one side to the other, and it lands on it. What it does is it makes it feel with a texture and a little bit dull look to it. So what we're doing right now is, I usually do this to most of the cars, but we're wet sanding it with a 1500 grit, then a 2000 grit, and then what we do is we use a compound that's equivalent to a 3000 grit, and it's by 3M. We wheel it, that brings it back down to a polish, and then we actually use a wax to finish it off, and you'll have an amazing depth, and that's how you get your garage jobs to look like some sort of show car finish. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. Katie's sanding the other side of the car. I'm gonna wheel this side, and then we'll be pretty much done with this paint job. We can pull the tape off and put the car back together.
So, crisis averted. The last sticker we almost put on was backwards. It seems wherever we bought it, they actually made it wrong and put the sticker on wrong. So that was a good catch on my part. And now we're gonna do the actual and once that baby touches the body of the car, she's stuck. So you gotta be really careful. That's all she wrote.
I'm not your clown. You can't make me dance.
You make me do stuff.
No, I'm not doing it, girl.
Just give me a little something.